Jan Tinklenberg, also known as Jan Tink. Welcome to my YouTube channel and blog. I'm going to show you how to create your own watercolor shimmer cardstock. For your convenience, I've linked all the products I've used in the description below. I came up with this idea because I've been using a lot of dyes lately, and finding the right color for all the bits and pieces can be challenging. I also wanted to experiment with a soft watercolor look and thought how fun it would be to paint my own cardstock to use with dyes. I'm going to start out with the dyes I wanted to use: Whimsy, Decor, Stacked Archways, and Holiday Words from Sizzix and Tim Holtz. I didn't end up using the Holiday Words after all. I also am going to use some Kuretake, Gansai, Tambi watercolors and some Ranger watercolor paper. I love these watercolors because they have so many colors and they have these beautiful shimmer pearlescent colors that I'm going to use. I started out by cutting my cardstock into quarters, and then I'm taping it to this really nice thick masonite panel that I bought from Amazon that I love to use for painting, because when you tape it down like this, it keeps it nice and flat when you dry it so that it doesn't warp. And I'm just putting some tape. This is artist tape from Blick, and it is kind of a low tack, so I can peel it back up without hurting the paper. I'm going to moisten the paper, and I'm going to start out just painting the colors that I want, and I'm going to use, basic colors like green and red and yellow and blue. And I'm going to lay down the first layer, because when it's really wet like this, you can't really create a really dark tone all at once. You have to kind of put on a layer, and then you have to dry it, and then you have to put on another layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in the colors I want. And these are more pigmented than some watercolors, so it will granulate into the little cracks and crevices of the texture of the watercolor paper. And I'm going to make one side of this more warm blue than the other. So one will eventually be more warm blue. Right now I'm just putting in a warm blue and some yellow. And this is really pretty. I really like it. Making one side more orange. Add some more color here. And some more color there. Once I'm satisfied, I'm going to go ahead and take my heat tool and I'm going to dry the paper. And I'm not going to make you watch all that, because obviously it's pretty dull, like watching paint dry. Now I'm going to add more paint on top of this. If I had tried to do it before when it wasn't dry, it would have just kept moving the paint around. It still will lift it a little bit when you're getting it wet again, but it's a lot easier to add a second layer and make the color deeper. Ooh, very pretty. And you want it really deep because you're going to add the shimmer on top, and it's going to make it look lighter. Now I'm going to make the background, and I'm got a long tall piece so that I have plenty of choice where I'm going to put my frame that I'm going to use. And I want a nice kind of white center and then color around the edges. And so I'm laying in some green because I thought it would look really like a tree in the background. And then I dried that. And I found that if I brought my heat tool really close, and this is the Stampin' Up! Heat tool, and it's got a low heat setting, and if I bring that really close and blow it right on the paint, it sort of moves it and creates a sort of bokeh look, which I really liked. And I'm spattering on some drops of paint and drying those, and I'm blotting them a little bit with my shop towel, which is a paper towel I really like using. They're really meant for the shop, for auto shops. And so I really like that. And I also added a little of the pearlescent white and pearlescent gold on top, little specks of that. Really pretty, like that. Alright, really pretty. Okay, now I've got my originals, and now I'm painting those over with the pearlescent white to make it shimmer. And I'm blotting in between each color because it does lift up the paint and it gets in my pearlescent, and I wanted to get rid of that color in there. Okay, now I'm going to take the tape off, and I'm going to do this really fast. You have to peel it like that, so that at an angle so that it doesn't tear the paper. Alright, now I'm going to do a lot of die cutting. And all of these, you can just use your regular settings, your regular sandwich. I'm using the magnetic platform, but sometimes you need a little help with tape with that because of where the magnets are positioned. And as I'm cutting them, I'm just sort of like laying them on top of each other in the order. I sorted all these pieces according to which ornament they went to. I did it pretty much, you know, the way that the dies are shown in the picture on the front of the package, but you could really like do anything you want with these. You could use the longer pieces on the shorter. You can make these ornaments look different from the way they look on the package just by changing which elements you want to use. And now I'm going to glue them down. I use Tombow Mono Multi for the bigger pieces. This can be really sticky. It gets all over your fingers, so it's not my favorite thing, but for these I really wanted them to stay put. So I used a little dab of those on the bigger pieces. And for the smaller pieces, I used my Sakura Quickie glue pen, which seemed to do a fine job. I find that if it's sat for a while and you need to get it started, the best way for that Sakura Quickie glue pen is to run it across a sanding block, and it just like scrapes all of the dried glue off of it, and you can get the glue flowing again. If that doesn't work, you can try wiping it with an alcohol wipe, and that seems to help too. So I'm just going to glue all these pieces down and get these ornaments put together. And I think that, you know, I cut some of these pieces out of different colors just in case I didn't like the ones that I cut. So like for the red ornament, I cut some of these squigglies in a lighter pinky red, and I didn't like the way they looked, so I switched to the green ones I cut. And you know, if I were a real hoarder, I would save all of those pieces and then try to use them later, but really life is too short. I'm using an acrylic block to hold these down as they dry, just to get them stuck down really well. And another thing that's really helpful to have when you're doing this is a set of tweezers. These are really old Mrs. Grossman sticker tweezers that I bought a long time ago. But there are a lot of good craft tweezers on the market, and I've linked some in the description below. And what else can I tell you about this process? It's just, you know, fiddly. And the important thing is to keep all of the little tiny pieces that you punch out of the way, so they you don't mistake them for something that you're actually going to use. So I'm almost done here, and I ended up cutting another little piece of yellow so that I could make that piece stand out a little more. Okay, now I'm going to cut my pine needles that I use for this, and these are Simon Says Stamps Pine Needle Trio. And I found that the regular sandwich just wasn't working for me, so I'm using the precision base plate, because these are really detailed dies, and honestly even with that I had a hard time, and I had to keep repositioning and going over and over, but they did finally cut through. And then I was trying to get them out, and I have a tip for this which you'll really love. Okay, in order to get these fine dies out, which are really, really hard, what you do is go from the back and punch out each tip of each little needle with your, I have this tool from Spellbinders that I really like for this, and just punch the tip out. Don't try to get the whole die out yet. And then from the front, go into the parts that touch the inner branch and punch those toward the back. Each one, poke, poke, poke. And here we're coming to the end. Look at that, just comes right out. I used to sit there and manipulate and try not to tear the thing as I was coming out with it, and once I discovered this tip, it's just like amazing. You can just like pop these things out really easy. Zoom. Wonderful. Alright, and now I'm going to arrange my ornaments on here, and I decided that there were just too many to fit, so I ended up making 2 cards from these. Alright, I'm going to apologize first because I sort of pulled everything down and it came out of frame when I was making this part of the video. But what I'm going to do is put some fun foam behind my frame piece to pop it up off the cardstock. And so I'm trimming it so that it's behind. You could cut it out with the die, but it ends up being a little bigger because you smush the foam, and that's really not a great look, so then you have to trim it down anyway. So I'm arranging my pieces, and I'm going to use some really great adhesive from scrapbook.com for the fun foam. It actually sticks to it, and you can tape it right to the foam, which a lot of them you'll try to lay down the adhesive on the foam and it won't stick. But this stuff, it does right to the foam. It's really good adhesive. And it's repositionable for a while. And then I decided I was going to use these pieces, and I would use a stamp set instead, which is Crazy Talk from Tim Holtz. And I'm just going to stamp that on the frame, the watercolor background, in my MISTI with some VersaFine Onyx ink. And I'm using the Just Believe stamp there. I really think that's a cute little stamp. And I'm going to position that right in the center of my cardstock and put my ornament with some adhesive squares that are foam, so that pops it up. And at this point, I'm trimming off the little bits of pine needles that I don't want up there in the corner. And I decided, for even more shimmer, why not add more shimmer? I mean, this is Christmas, let's do it right. I'm going to add some sequins with some mono multi-matte, and what happens is I'm trying to put this little, and it just like smears right on my cardstock and everything. And what I found is if you have a little piece of scrap cardstock, you scrape that off right away with that scrap cardstock, and it will take it all off, and you'll never be even able to tell that it was there. Just keep these little squares of cardstock on your desk. They're really handy, and you can scrape that stuff right off. Alright, this is the other card that I made. I ended up making another background and some more pine needles, which I didn't figure you needed to watch. And what I'm going to do is create the hangers for the ornaments to the pine branches, because I decided that it just didn't look right just sitting on top without anything hanging it from the pine tree. So I'm going to use some DMC thread, and I'm making a little loop, and I'm trying to put it through the eye of my needle. And honestly, sometimes that really works well, but with this metallic stuff, it just doesn't. So what I'm going to do is show you another little trick. Is you take a little piece of paper, and this is actually the backing from one of those foam squares. You put it over the beginning of your thread, like that. And then you put that through the eye of the needle, and it threads it beautifully. It's a really great trick I learned when I was doing cross stitch. And now I'm just going to knot the ends of the thread. I've doubled it up, and I'm going to knot the ends just to kind of make it tidy. I'm not going to plan on the knot doing anything. I just don't want the ends flying because this stuff is kind of fiddly. And then I'm going from the back, and I'm putting it through the holes that I made with my piercing tool there, and I'm going to just tape that down with a piece of Scotch tape so it won't go anywhere. And then I'm just going to sew my thread through my cardstock through the holes that I already made, and I'm going to do them both at once. No point in cutting this and then doing it again and having to tape it like 4 times instead of just 2. So nobody's going to see this stuff on the back. And then I'm just going to put another piece of tape, hold it in place, and trim it off. Beautiful. And I put that on my card front the same way I did the other one. So that's how I made these beautiful cards. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please let YouTube know by giving me a thumbs up. And if you haven't done it already, I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. These are beautiful cards, and they have a really beautiful shimmer. I'm sure anybody's going to be glad to get these. and it's going to be hard for me to send them to anybody, honestly. I hope you enjoyed my video. Thank you for watching.